Welcome to the third episode of European Schoolnet podcast series that today we are running together with the Enable project that aims to tackle online gender-based violence. And today we're talking about the intersection, the role that AI plays in addressing gender-based violence. Artificial intelligence is one of the most discussed topics nowadays, mostly because of its transformative potential, but also because of the risks that it poses, particularly concerning data privacy, ethical implications, and AI bias. For instance, AI systems can be misused and can cause and facilitate gender-based violence online, from deepfakes and manipulated content to AI algorithms that reinforce harmful gender stereotypes. My name is Ina, and I'm working in Digital Citizenship Department of European Schoolnet, where we tackle the topics related to online safety, digital rights, digital skills, and media literacy, and everything related to digital environments and the use of technology. And today I'm here with amazing guest, Silvia Semenzin, who is a researcher, postdoctoral researcher, and her expertise focuses on technology-facilitated gender-based violence online. And also, she is an international activist, and thanks to her contribution, and now the non-consensual sharing of intimate images is criminalized in Italy. So I'm very much looking forward, Silvia, to speak to you today. I have a lot of questions, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Inda, for the invitation and to Manable for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here and chatting.
Perfect. So let's dive into it. My first question would be, could you give us like a general overview on what type of risks we are talking about when young people and children go online? What type of online gender-based violence risk they can face and encounter with the use of AI?
Of course, Inna. So I would start from the very beginning of the whole question. So, as you have rightly mentioned, you know that AI right now is a buzzword. So, we're seeing it everywhere. In the past year, everyone is discussing generative AIs and their harms and potentially risk, also possibly what they could do for good. But in the conversation around gender based violence, particularly both on women and youngers, this is very interesting because AI is showing us how gender based violence online is a very nuanced phenomenon. And also, it's ever changing together with technology. So, it's very difficult to give an overview which is exhaustive right now because we have to take into account that this is always changing and evolving. So, what we can see right now is that in the past year, at least, there was a growth of risk embedded into online gender-based violence and the relationship with AI. And the first example that I'm thinking of, and I'm sure you must be also familiar with it, is what is called and known as deepfake technology. Deepfake technology is basically the use of AI for creating manipulated content, manipulated pictures, video, audios. And 96% of this content online is sexually explicit, meaning that most of this deepfake content is abuse. 99% of this content targets women. So this shows us the gendered side of this kind of particular risk, which can have a big detrimental impact on the reputation and on the psychological and social life of women and girls. But let's not just focus on deepfake technology because this is just one of the problems that AI can cause. I'm gonna list some, and then if you want, we can get a bit into more depth. For example, generative AI algorithms can also be used against women and girls for defamation campaign or for automating what it's called online harassment or doxing. This is already happening. And this is also very important, for example, in light of political elections or crucial political moments where women are, of course, the most targeted for hateful or threatening messages, which are now facilitated by this generative AI, which can escalate this kind of violence. Then I also want to mention the AI driven chatbots and virtual assistants, which can be programmed with certain biases that can contribute to reinforcing gender stereotypes. Then we have virtual reality, augmented reality, the metaverse, which are very immersive reality where online violence can also be lived in a more immersive way. And we have what is called the meta rape, for example, already experienced in the metaverse. And finally, maybe this is the most common and also something that has been around for a very long time now, which is the algorithmic bias that can unintentionally perpetuate and amplify societal biases which are present in the training data. Just an overview.
Yeah, yeah, very very comprehensive overview. I think we'll need to go into details for each issue in particular. So, am I right to say that it's some issues are related to the behavior of users around AI tools and around AI systems, but something is, of course, based on AI algorithms that are out there. So, if we're looking at the kind of like the issue of misusing AI tools, how maybe you've done some work, some in your research that gives us an understanding of this behavior. What type of reasons predators and offenders follow? What type of incentives do they have to act like this, to create deepfakes and manipulated content? What triggers them?
So it's very complicated. There is not just a simple answer to this question, I think, because the reasons can be very different as well, depending on which level you are of creating deepfakes. There are people who are at the very beginning of the implementation of deepfakes, so they can code and they can decide openly to create deepfakes against women, for example. And then there are also users who can do it from a more naive way somehow, because these deepfakes bots and application are very easy to use and to find. They are free, they are very quick. So I would say it highly depends. We have to take into account that right now we are witnessing a moment of a big growth of online misogyny. So it means that the so-called manosphere, what we always thought that it was just a closed environment of the internet, is popping. The bubble is popping, so it's going everywhere, and we have a big monoculture, I would say, on the internet. So part of the reason I would say is often to target women and to harm them, to make sure their voices can stay out of the internet, which has been traditionally very masculinized. So this is specifically happening to those who decide openly to create this kind of content. But I think that in general, deepfake contents are also understood as less malicious because of this idea of them being fake. So it means we underestimate the actual harms that women and girls can live when they experience deepfake abuse. So, as I was saying, 99% of this abuse is targeting women. These AI are trained on women body. So we have a huge social problem is here, I think, especially for young men and boys who are using this kind of tools out of, I think, also a sort of curiosity or thinking that this is not harmful again. They don't have a sexual education that makes them understand the violence that is behind using this kind of applications and platforms. And I also have this feeling that much can also do with the so-called pornification of society. So meaning we are exposed to a lot of porn images or sexualized images, and we also tend to look for more extreme content, to what it's felt as more authentic is more intriguing somehow. So this
Oh, okay, okay.
deepfake technology can also provide this idea to have more authentic content, So they want to undress women that they know, for example, feeling that this is more exciting somehow. And this has a lot to do with masculinities as well.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how accessible these platforms are. To be honest, I was shocked when I discovered that, and also the fact that yes, it's highly customizable, so you can definitely like use your imagination and fantasy and allow it to go the directions that you wanted to yeah, which can pose some risks. So my question to you, actually, in regards to masculinity, you've done some amazing work and a study on the Telegram case, if I'm not mistaken, and it was on the non-consensual dissemination of intimate images. Could you probably tell us more about it?
Yes, I think this research is very, very, very entrenched with what I was saying. Also, because imagine that already back to 2020, when the research took place, deepfake porn was already there. So,
Mm,
meaning there were already bots for deepfaking women and girls. So, very briefly, what I did together with a colleague, Lucia Bainotti, was accessing 50 groups and channels. We created a sample of these abusive and misogynist channels on Telegram, which are specifically created for sharing non consensual material, sexual material of women and girls, just women and girls. So they are populated mostly by men. And our research had a research question at the very basic, which was why? Why is this happening? Why are these men meeting to share this type of content? And what is happening? What is wrong? What is the social reason behind this?
yeah.
And beyond finding material that was really shocking, because it was not just, of course, the content and the sexually explicit content that we found non-consensually shared, but we even found an archive called the Bible, where all this material was collected and encrypted to make sure that if the channel gets closed, all the material will be saved. So they have this holy idea also of this non-consensual material. That's why it's called the Bible. And there were also material of women who are already dead, like Tiziana Cantone, and the Italian well, not survivor, the Italian victim, that then also opened the discourse on about non-consensual dissemination of intimate images in Italy. And to reply our question and go back to masculinity, we understood that the problem was mostly about how these men and boys from every age and from every kind of social class were creating their social relation. They were peer relations. So it's what in we called the homosocialization of peers, the heteronormative homosocialization, meaning that women bodies are used as a trade currencies to construct masculinity, to make other men and other boys telling you you are a good man, you're a true man, you're a real man because you desire and you like women and you like sex. And so, in this sense, the consent is negotiated or even hidden. Women are just objects, you know? And that
Wow.
was, I think, the most shocking result, and also telling us so much about what we are missing right now in society to limit
Mhm.
this kind of problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's really shocking and a little bit sad as well to hear that stuff like this exists out there. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Sylvia. I think I would like to now move a little bit towards the AI algorithms and gender stereotypes and how this really, the intersection that it has. Could you probably give us some examples on how AI systems have reinforced perhaps the gender stereotypes?
Of course, there are many, many examples in this case. As I said, some of them are already out there for a very long while. And thinking, for example, of social media platforms, sometimes it makes me smile that now we're discussing generative AI and artificial intelligence at large as if it was something new, something that has just been popping up in society. But social media platforms has been using artificial intelligence forever to, for example, track us or deciding which content we can see, whose voices should be listened or not. So this means that, for example, in this case of social media platforms, one of the most interesting examples and maybe the most known is censorship, right? So how these algorithms can decide which bodies can be seen, how women bodies, for example, should or should not be seen. So it means that they have basically encoded rules, social norms that are very discriminating into written norms online. So, for example,
Mhm.
we cannot show our nipples online, but men can. And this is just arbitrary. I don't think we never had a discussion on this. But then, if we move to other more complex systems that are also already out there, and I'm thinking, for example, of systems, algorithmic system that decide who to hire. So this was an example in Amazon, deciding who was the best candidate to cover a very high position in computer science inside Amazon. And not surprisingly, this algorithm was excluding women from the process, because it was fed again with discriminatory data. And we have a problem of women into tech, so the algorithm was just reinforcing this. Another example that comes to my mind is an example of Spain, where the government decided to use and implement an algorithmic system that was used to decide and classify the risk of violence that a woman could have based on her experience of stalking, for example, or previous violence. And these algorithms, again, were fed with insufficient data or biased data. So the result as killed women who were classified as low risk, in Spain.
Okay.
What happens with many of these systems, it's something that I want to highlight, is that oftentimes they are very opaque, and they are black boxes where this data becomes very difficult to check. So if we don't open these black boxes, we cannot face these biases that are implemented within these systems. So the big problem right now with artificial intelligence and bias is that women are not included most times. Marginalized communities are not included. Oftentimes, these teams and councils of AI inside platforms or inside these systems are basically populated by white men. So imagine where this bias can come from. Sometimes we think that it's technology, that it's just a bit flawed, and then we can fix it. But I think this kind of example can just show us that actually it's a societal problem, it's a cultural problem, it's not
Cultural, yeah.
technical.
It's culturally embedded already, and then we just train AI kind of to continue this pattern. Thank you so much, Sylvia. Actually, this brought me to the question: how could you explain us how AI collect data on us? I think it's became pretty evident that it's just following us on across all platforms, across all networks and devices that we connect to. But could you perhaps explain us more in technical details, if possible? What type of technology is used to collect this data?
Well, I want to highlight, and first of all, that I'm not a technologist. So I'm a sociologist. I study digital technology, so I know how these systems works. But if I say something that is not technically correct, please forgive me. However, how this technology work is basically with a training in your system with millions of data. I'm talking now about the generative AI, which often are taken and scraped from the internet. And this oftentimes happen non-consensually. Actually, we have a huge ethical discussion regarding generative AI on art, on culture, on journalism, on information, because the data they are using to create the beautiful images that we see out there are created with images of artists that are already out in the internet and that are scraped and put into this system, and then trained to give you an output that it's a fabricated output, right? So the big problem with how this data, with these machines are trained, is precisely data, because data are not neutral and so on. uh, Algorithms are not neutral, and outputs will never be neutral. So we have to discuss data, we have to think of data, because if we don't, these algorithmic systems will only regurgitate the same biases that humans have trained them to adopt. I think this is the crucial issue we are facing right now with artificial intelligence. And from an intersectional point of view, this is very relevant, because it's not just about gender, but it's also about race, class, disability, sexual orientation, religion, and how all these dimensions intersect among them and with gender. Meaning that the people who will be most discriminated by these systems that now seem to be the revolution, and that we're thinking that they will make our life better, will be the ones that will suffer the most from the
Oh, okay.
consequences of having this kind of technologies into having be put into society without a previous discussion on their ethics.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks, Sylvia. I think, yeah, I would like to come back to the issue of gender stereotypes, and I would like to ask you to perhaps elaborate a little bit more on the study that you made also on Pornhub that was about heteronormativity that was prioritized on the platform. Could you tell us more about this study?
Of course, the study was also connected with this topic that I was commenting right now about algorithms and the so-called platform affordances that are offered from the platform to, again, decide which type of content you will consume in the platform. So, what we wanted to see on Pornhub, since it's the most used platform for consuming pornographic content, was understanding how Pornhub was tracing users and personalizing their own page according to the data they were collecting and tracing. The first result, which I think is very interesting, is that first of all, Pornhub at time of the research was not telling out openly that they were tracking users, so that was a violation of GDPR, and that opened also a strategic litigation against Pornhub for violating rules. So not telling users that they were being traced. And this is particularly important in pornographic platforms because you know that they are getting to know your sexual preferences, your sexual orientation, and they can use it to send this to companies or against you, you know. So we have to be transparent about our data again and how they are being used. And second thing, which I think is the most interesting result, and it's connected with what you were saying regarding cis heteronormativities and male gaze on online platform, is that although the platform was tracing users, and although we saw that data were actually collected, Pornhub decided to not personalize the homepage, which is pretty crazy if you think about how the rest of social media platforms work, which are highly personalized. But in the case of Pornhub, it was not interesting whether you were a woman, a hetero woman, a lesbian woman, or a transgender woman or man. The content you were proposed by Pornhub was always the one for a hetero man. So this is exactly the result showing how also how pornographic platforms embed this heterosexual male gaze. And since pornographic platforms are still used from so many young people to understand sex and inform themselves about sex, I think this is particularly crucial because it tells us that without sexual education, these platforms will be the ones telling young boys and girls how they should expect their sexual relations to be. And we know that these platforms also have very extreme content, a lot of non consensual content. So I don't think we should leave sexual education to pornographic platforms.
Okay, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Actually, now I have a question on sexual education and technology. I know, Sylvia, that you also do some seminars and workshops in schools, and you try to, give this knowledge to young people. Could you perhaps give a little bit of an insight? How does it happen? What type of response you get from young people? Because it's quite a
Yes,
sensitive topic, so I can imagine that it's very difficult to approach young people on that.
I mean, young people, I think they are very eager to learn.
Oh,
So
okay.
I have to
Good
say
to
that
know.
in the past years, yes, in the past year, I've done sexual education mostly through an NGO that I co-founded in
Mhm.
Italy, Virgin and Martyr, that was born with the aim of doing sexual education and digital education. And I have to say that it was oftentimes young people calling us to their schools. So they were like, "Hi, can you please come? We have this day where we have autonomous day, independent day where we can decide who to invite. Can you come? We would like to know more about, I don't know, gender identities or even porn, bodies, you know, or digital sex." And so for us, it was always very intriguing to see how they wanted to receive sexual education, but in a country like Italy, they can't because because we have a political willingness to limit and censor discourses around sexualities, and this creates a problem. So again, I think this is really about politics. It's really about deciding whether we want to give young people the tools to understand what is happening around them, both on the digital and the offline and the interest dimension that both have, because otherwise we are leaving them alone, and I don't think this is fair. And I have to say that every time I went to school, I always came out with a very positive feeling of saying, even if I convinced one person today about positive or inclusive discourses, there was always somebody raising their hand and say, "Thank you for saying this. I am non-binary, or I had an experience of online sexual violence. So thank you for saying this."
Hmm.
And I felt that saved them. So what if we had this every day? This is what I'm thinking, because 2 hours per year is not enough, and we're still having this problem all around Europe. So we should have path of sexual education and digital education to make sure young people can be can feel safe online and
Yeah.
offline.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, my next question is about mostly digital education, and it's concerning AI chatbots because I think it's really concerning issue right now, especially that they're trained for automated harassment, or they can mimic language and behavior of the trusted adult, or sometimes it's also extremely scary to realize that they also can leverage your emotions. They can read when you feel lonely or sad, and they can play with it and make you feel comfortable and secure, etc. So my question here is that how do we explain, and how do we um, educate young people to conversate and to avoid this type of traps, and just to be aware of those when they conversate, so to say, with AI chatbots? What can they do and know?
I mean, again, this is complex because I think we shouldn't think that adults in this case can educate young people, because
Mm.
oftentimes, if you go to people who are older than us, they are possibly even more fragile in front of these traps than young people who are living into this kind of technology. So, of course, we all need to be educated, and the way to do it at a societal overview is understanding the risk, first of all, understanding what is happening, and we're going to a huge speed, and having political responses in this sense is difficult, because you know that political institutions are always slower than technology. But I think what we need again is understanding the concept of privacy, of intimacy, again of consent. Both all of these concepts as collective issues, not just individual issues. Otherwise, the response will always be put on the individual instead of collective
Mhm.
society, which avoids providing political answers, in my opinion. So, of course, we need to do education, as I said, but also I want to highlight once again that this is about political willnesses to limit also the implementation of certain malicious application of AI. Because right now, when you discuss AI, especially in political institution, it's all about innovation. It's all about letting it go, because we cannot stop the innovation, and we cannot limit technology, blah blah blah. And this is false, and this is false because we have to put ethics at the core of the innovation and the technological development. Otherwise, that will always have bad consequences on
Mhm.
society and also on young people, who of course are more fragile. But what I want to say, Ina, is that I will never tell young people not to use technology, because it's impossible and
Absolutely,
they
yeah.
will always do. But this is what they are told oftentimes at schools, by governments, but their parents. And this is not the right way to do it. It's more, again, also in this case, to understand together with them
Yeah.
what is going on and what we could do regarding changing.
Yeah, I agree. We cannot avoid technology is there, AI is there, and it will be there. So we need to learn, and we need to help young people to become more aware in terms of how we can use it and leverage it to its full potential instead of just avoiding it. That is impossible. Okay, that's a very interesting insight, Silvia. So my question here is, so we know the complexity of the risks that are related to AI. My question here is that why can we not train? And I know that there are some efforts already made to train and to detect predators, offenders, and to flag those, and to detect generated AI generated content online. But my question here, can we trust? Are those tools reliable enough? And do you believe that in near, if not, do you believe in that in near future it will be the case that we'll be able to kind of use AI to prevent those type of things from happening instead of allowing them and facilitating them?
So, again, I think my answer in this case will be also nuanced, in the sense that I think, first of all, that technology should, could, and should be more inclusive and more feminist. So we need to use feminism as the core concept to develop technology, meaning we need to include more women and more marginalized community into the development of technology to make sure we can have better results and better innovation, you know. And in this case, for example, feminist activism with a H, so hackers feminist, shows us that there are implementations of technology, or even of AI that can be used for good. But this is again something that requires a very big political understanding of the problems. So when we understand the problems and we understand discrimination, we can think of alternatives. So
Mhm.
again, I think intersectional feminism shall guide the change in this sense. Otherwise, there won't be change at all. The problem is that most of these alternatives are always side, so they are not massified, and they are not used by the broad public, the general public, because you also know that the internet is not a democratic place. There are there are bubbles that are bigger, and there are platforms that are more used, much more used than others, and these are not inclusive. So, on the other hand, my answer also connects with the idea that for me, since we have discussed um, so far how much this is a social problem and a cultural problem, I don't think that we need necessarily a technical response to this problem.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that technology will change together with society and culture. We don't need more technology. I think we need more culture. We need more ethics again, and we
Mhm.
need a broader understand of consent, and we need to also recognize that gender-based violence exists and is causing so much harm that
Mhm.
we cannot just ignore it, you know.
Yeah.
And um, and this is so important because again, we always think that this technology then are just technical, you know, are just mathematics, and we forget how much there is always a human choice in the
Mhm.
system that we use. Even in platform moderation, we think that platform moderation is just for algorithms online. It's
Mm.
not. There is always a human being deciding whether the content it stays or goes, you know. So again, I think we should work more on the human side of technology and less on mathematics, and then possibly we will have better results at the very end.
Yeah, that sounds good and quite positive that we still have some power and we can make a change. And speaking about a change, actually, could you tell us more about your the campaign that you contributed to that led to the criminalization of non-consensual image sharing in Italy? I think it's very impressive. So I think this is also an example of how we can, how we can change the situation that we're at right now. Sylvia, share it to us, please.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course, I will be happy to share it with you. I have to say it's a very long story, so I will try to resume. This started back in 2017 when I started to work on online gender based violence and image based sexual abuse. I have to say this, as most of us women, feminists, start to work on this kind of topics. Is always due to a sort of abuse experience that we have. So that was also my case. Unfortunately, this is how we started. I like to say this mostly because sometimes we think that feminists start to be feminists because they had like an illumination on the way, you know, and they started to be passionate about this topic out of nothing. And it's not true. We
Mm,
experience violence. So our lives are embedded by violence. So this, in my case, was also online, not just online. I had several experiences of that. And in that moment, I was also studying a PhD. So I wanted to give a name to what I was to what I experienced. It. I wanted to understand to how many other women that was happening, and this is how everything started, right? Because I started to collect data, I started to work with NGOs like Amnesty International in Italy, and we started to create this framework for gender-based violence online that was unexisting back to 2017. And this slowly took me into a political engagement that was completely unexpected at the very beginning, and it grew exponentially during the years until in 2000, end of 2018, beginning of 2019, I launched this campaign online at the beginning through a petition. The hashtag was intimità violata, meaning violated intimacy, where I was asking to Italian institutions to do something regarding non-consensual dissemination of intimate images and recognize it as a gendered problem, and recognize it as a violation of consent, and recognize also the responsibility of all the digital platforms that were facilitating that content, and we're not removing it, and we're not replying to survivors. So that
Mhm.
campaign started online, but then it became a mediatic campaign. It also took form offline through schools again, through events on the territory, and we started to work on a bill because I started to collaborate with a politician in Italy, until the law was presented in July 2019 and approved in July 2019. So it was a very quick campaign. Then in the end, in 6 months, we had the law approved. And unfortunately, it was not approved fully as I wanted. So the part on digital platforms was gone, for example. Yet
Okay.
the law recognized the gendered aspect of it because it was introduced in the Red Code bill, which is about gender-based violence. Uh, Last things I want to say regarding this campaign is, first of all, that it shows that we can always make a change if we want. If we get angry for real and we start to collaborate with other people and try to make ourselves understood, and we can really make the difference. I really believe it, and this is empowering, because sometimes we think that in front of technology and violence there is nothing we can do, but this is not true. This is what they want us to think. And then on the other hand, I think that also in this case, the legal response is necessary, but is not enough. So we need to do more, because this is also a transnational problem. It's not just
Mm.
national. We need to work on the European side of it, because platforms are not national, they are global. So the work is not finished, and we there is much more that we have to do and that we are doing. I'm working with other survivors and activists around Europe and around the world, and hopefully this will go further and further until we receive justice for real, because right now it's not happening, and so we will insist until this is done.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sounds very motivating and inspiring. Thank you, Silvia. I think on this positive note, we'll try to draw this podcast to an end, although there are so many questions that I would like to continue asking you, but probably next time when we meet again, hopefully. So thank you so much, Silvia, for making yourself available and for sharing your expertise today and the
Thank you,
amazing work
Inda.
that you do. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
It was
much.
an amazing conversation. Very happy.
Thank you so much. I would just take opportunity to also share the outcomes of the Menable project that we are currently working on tackling gender-based violence. Recently, the Menable Toolbox has been launched, and it's an interactive game that contains quizzes, dilemmas, and challenges that young people can play with and empower digital gender dialogue and gender stereotypes dialogue in the classroom or at home together with their teachers or parents and caregivers, but also by themselves. So this can be found and with other initiatives of Menable on at menable.eu. So please go ahead and visit. You can also subscribe to social media channels of the Menable projects on TikTok and Instagram. And please subscribe to European Schoolnet podcast channel as well to follow up on the next episodes that will be dealing with technology, innovation, and education topics. Thank you so much for listening us today, and I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you.